Hi, this is Eugene of valleyindy.org. Before the podcast, I just wanted to read an important message. COVID-19 has changed life as we know it, and the Valley needs your help now more than ever. The region's health and human service providers face unprecedented challenges in meeting the needs of those affected by this pandemic. Some organizations are even at risk of closing their doors. But you can make a difference right here in our community by joining with others in one of these three ways. Give directly to Valley nonprofits, participate in the Valley United Way's annual campaign, or support the Valley Community COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund. Please visit valleyfoundation.org to learn more. Thank you.
Hundreds of years we brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur.
Hey everybody, welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast. My name is Eugene Driscoll of valleyindy.org. I haven't done one of these podcasts in a couple of months, so I'm a little rusty. I apologize in advance. We've already been plagued by technical problems, all of my doing. But I am very excited to welcome to the podcast Becca Toms. She is the communications specialist with the Valley United Way. Hello, Becca.
Hello. Sorry, I had myself on mute because of the weed whacking in the background.
Yeah, hey, it's all right. You know what? With coronavirus and everything else going on in the country and world today, if we're going to have a little background noise, I'm sure people can put up with it. All right, listeners, that's it. You got to deal with it. And then making a return appearance to this podcast, in a way, is Corey Thomas. He is the education director of Massaro Community Farm, which is right on the Woodbridge and Sonia line. Hey, Corey, how are you?
Hey there. Good. Thanks for having us.
No, thank you so much for coming on, both of you, and thank you for your patience in working around my schedule. So we're going to be talking today about community gardens, which have popped up all over the Valley. And why they're needed and how people can help. And I guess Becca, should we start with you about sort of the background on these community farms, how they sprung up and what the need is? Because I'm not sure if people understand, or perhaps they do now because of the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Food insecurity in the Valley is a real issue, and it's been described at length by the Valley United Way, including in a report issued a couple of years ago called the Alice Report. So, Becca, why are these gardens needed and how did the idea come about?
Yeah, so these gardens were actually the brainchild of Jack Walsh initially. So back when he was the president of United Way, he started kind of hearing about these issues with food security and knowing that gardens were something that would not just make a community more beautiful, but also provide for the needs of the community. He was trying to look into different ways of incorporating these into our neighborhoods. And then when Sharon Gibson came along as our president after Jack left, she was very excited about the project and just threw herself into it, was able to get some really great funding from some wonderful community organizations, and was able to really expand the program and provide resources to get these gardens built and planted and kind of spread out throughout the Valley in the areas that really need them the most. So with these gardens, we really try to locate them in communities that could use fresh local produce. As you probably know, it's not always easy to get your hands on really good fresh produce. I mean, we're definitely lucky that we have grocery stores that are usually pretty well stocked with all sorts of stuff, but that's vegetables that are coming from all over the globe. And basically what happens when you pick a vegetable, and Corey can speak more to this, it starts losing the nutrients that are in it as soon as it's picked. So you can imagine there are tons of nutrients in like a beet freshly picked from the ground. But when it's then stored for like a day or two in some far region of the country or maybe other part of the world, and then it has to take a flight, and then it has to be put in a distribution area, and then it goes to the grocery store, and then it's only put out when their stock is low. You've lost a lot of nutrients in that entire process. So really the best way to get the most nutrient dense food to individuals is to have that garden right there in front of them.
And how many gardens are in the valley at this point?
So there's 13. We have one in Oxford. I'm going to go backwards in my mind because it's just easier that way. One in Oxford, 2 in Seymour, and then I believe we have 4 in Derby, 5 in Ansonia, 1 in Shelton. Did I get them all, Corey?
I think you did, yes.
Okay, and then
I don't
Corey,
think we left anyone out.
Corey, how did Massaro Community Farm get involved in these community gardens?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, community gardens, it can take a lot of effort to really work to integrate those into the community. It's one thing to obviously take a ton of effort to establish the gardens, put up fencing, put in the raised beds, get the soil delivered, but then it's really the start of the season especially takes a lot of work to make sure that you have seedlings to go in the garden and you have volunteers that are interested in coming and helping out at the sites. So Massaro jumped in to help out with some of that administrative as well as sort of boots on the ground assistance. So thankfully I was able to reach out to a lot of volunteers, many of them returning thanks to Valley United Way and the work they put in the past couple of years of kind of gathering folks that were interested, as well as putting out the call for new volunteers who were interested in helping out. And then thankfully, because we are a certified organic farm already serving the community, especially with sort of renewed vigor due to the food insecurity issues with COVID-19, we had a lot of seedlings available thanks to our farm manager, Steve. So we were able to get a lot of seedlings, bring them to the sites, get them planted along with volunteers. At that point, it's about sort of maintaining the gardens and making sure the volunteers are supported in what they're doing at the sites. And so that's where Massaro's kind of been jumping in. And as the season goes on, we'll be working more to make sure the produce that is grown in these gardens is either used immediately in the local community or donated to, food pantries or food banks in the immediate area as well. Trying to keep that produce really just like hyper local in a way.
And then how do people in a given neighborhood find out about the garden? How does a member of the public get involved? Let's say I've lost my job and I'm looking for something like this. How do I sign up? And any information as to how many people have been helped so far by this program?
Well, I can definitely speak to the volunteer engagement. Perhaps Becca could then speak to the previous impact of the program. So thankfully, Valley United Way has some really handy-dandy signage at all of these sites that explain what the garden site is and who it's for and how it's supposed to be used. So even folks just walking by can get a sense of what the space is and what the intention is. If there are folks that are interested in getting involved with the gardens, they can email me directly. My email is education@massarofarm.org. At that point, I can sort of hear more about what they're interested in, what their availability is, and even just where they're living, because we have gardens in many of the Valley neighborhoods. So there might be a garden, that's right down the street from them. And just to your point about sort of the different people who've had get involved, we have had people reach out to us who have lost their jobs. We have folks that live right next door and are looking to grow some food. We even have some folks that are in Master Gardener programs who originally were looking into more things like ornamental plants or nursery production, but now with the changing landscape of food availability and sort of the changes we've seen to our food system, I think a lot of these folks are sort of pivoting towards being more interested in food insecurity in the area. So it's great to have sort of a lot of diversity in the folks that are getting involved with the community gardens.
And then Becca, in terms of how many people have actually benefited, people that are actually getting their food from these gardens, do you have any statistics and numbers on how many families you're helping?
Sure. Well, it's to be honest, it's a little bit hard to track. And that's because the gardens are meant to be owned by the community, and they're open at all times. So we don't necessarily keep a video tab on the garden to say who's coming in and out. So, who knows, it could be hundreds, but I do know that in regards to poundage, we've definitely, I would say, done over 2,000 pounds of food in the last couple of years, just as a rough estimate, with the amount of tomatoes and greens and peppers and cucumbers that even I helped harvest last year and brought to some food banks, gave out to neighbors. So it's, we may not always have firm figures of how many specific people are being helped by this, but, every single time I go out to one of the gardens, there's always someone new that I'm engaging. There's always someone new that I'm talking to that's like, hey, what's going on here? And that's another potential person that's gaining from these gardens. And I think that they usually do. I come back to the gardens and I see these people again, and we talk more about what's going on, and it continues to grow.
And then in terms of food security in general in the Valley, what are you hearing with COVID-19? I personally feel locally, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop in terms of the economic impact of what's happening. I'm not sure if it's here yet or if it's coming. I was talking to someone last week, and they talked about how we might have a serious issue coming soon with housing as rents become due. People have had a few months to not pay, but that they're going to have to pay very soon. So what is your sense in the community in terms of food insecurity as it relates to COVID-19?
Well, I think you're right. The other shoe has not yet dropped. And that's because there are still a lot of government programs and support that are out there that are helping people that are kind of just making it by. So I think that we are going to see an increase in need, especially because in some of our communities in the Valley, the people in these communities fit exactly that ALICE profile that you mentioned earlier. And for those that don't know, ALICE stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed Individuals. So these are people that are working, but they can't afford their basic needs based on their salaries. So those are also the first people to usually lose their jobs in a job crisis sort of situation. So they may be scrambling and finding work here and there, but there's been quite a bit of job loss in our community. And once those government policies kind of come to an end and are dwindling out, we're going to see an increase in people that are looking for support, not just with food, but also with housing, with electric bills and things like that. So anything that we can do to alleviate one of these areas that they're going to be struggling with, and starting right now, can really make a difference.
And Corey, have you had more people from, say, Ansonia, Derby, Seymour, wherever the lower valley, that's where our listener base is, have they been reaching out to the farm in any way? Are they more curious? One thing that we did a story on a couple of months ago showing that more and more people were going to farms in Shelton for chickens and whatnot because they didn't want to venture out to the supermarket because of a fear of the pandemic, and me included. Have you had more people coming to Massaro to inquire about what it's about?
So I do know we've had a huge increase in the interest overall of getting produce from the farm. And so our response to COVID has kind of been, we did increase our CSA shares. So for your listeners who may not know, CSA stands for Community Supportive Agriculture. So it's a program where folks come to the farm once a week and pick up a share or, a box, a bag full of vegetables each week. And so they pay up in advance and they come throughout the season to the farm. We have had a big increase in folks who are signed up for that. So we kind of adjusted our capacity to meet that need. In addition, we've opened up we did have a store running each week where folks can place orders. And we actually worked with local farms to sort of diversify the options that we had available for folks to pick up from the farm. So, we had vegetables available, but then we were working with other farms to have mushrooms available or dairy products, things like that. And the interest has been huge. I don't have any data on town specific, but it is pretty diverse. We do get folks from a variety of neighboring towns. You're exactly right. These are folks that want to avoid going to the grocery store, want to avoid sort of those public outings. Or also, there may be things that are starting to be limited in grocery stores. So this is a way for folks to not only support their local farm and kind of keep their money local, but also kind of pick up their food in a little bit more of a safer way by coming to the farm rather than a grocery store.
And I've been personally amazed at the difference in taste. To go back to what Becca had said at the beginning of this podcast, it's night and day. I live on beer and pizza. So, but I have been expanding, trying to get a little healthier in my old age. But the taste is just, it's so worth it. So we've been talking for about 16 minutes now. I just want to, Becca, let's start with you, if you would. You're the communications specialist. I think sometimes in these podcasts, I sort of run them into the ground with answering questions. But what do you? Here's your chance to sort of address the public. What do you want to say about these community gardens, or what do you want to stress, or perhaps there's help that's needed? Whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, what I really want to stress is, definitely use these gardens for food. We want people to be involved in these gardens. So even if you're not someone who feels very comfortable actually doing the work of maintaining the garden, we still welcome you to just come and sit and enjoy the gardens, because one of the things that is often necessary during this time of COVID-related stress is a time for giving yourself a mental health break. So we try to create these gardens to be a little bit of an oasis, so that you're not just getting food to feed your belly, but also something to feed your soul too. So I really encourage community members to go out and check out these gardens. And even if you can't necessarily participate in maintaining, and just enjoy the space. And if you do need the food, go ahead and pick it. There's signs in the gardens that show you how to harvest and use the produce. So I know sometimes harvesting things like kale can be confusing. So just read those signs and look at those guidelines, and enjoy the gardens, because they are for the community.
I live in Derby, and you use the word oasis, and I'm struck every time I drive by or walk by one of these community gardens, just how beautiful they are. It is a place where you just want to hang out, especially like you said, with everything that's going on, for a mental health break. So it's very well said. And then Corey, now is your time to shine. What have I not asked you, as a guy who knows nothing about farming, agriculture, or community gardens? What should I know? What do you want to tell the public?
Yeah. Well, I think just from the 30,000 feet view, the whole reason I got involved in this sort of career is because I find that education is the path to helping our food system. And what a great way to educate or help folks understand more about where their food comes from than having a community garden right in their neighborhood. And so I look at these gardens as an amazing opportunity for folks to learn more about growing their own food, learn more about the environment and sort of where your food is coming from. So, I mean, Becca really touched on a ton of great points about sort of access to the green space and how that can be really limited in certain communities. So that's always a great resource for folks, but also it's an amazing educational opportunity. And I love the opportunity to share that with other folks. Even just today, I was at a site showing a new volunteer, what some of the common pests were in the garden and what we were growing where. And there just happened to be a construction crew that was working nearby, and I ended up talking with them about the garden site. So I think it's a great way for the community for community members to connect with each other, especially in an outdoor space where you can do so safely, considering the current circumstances. And it's just amazing to sort of have this opportunity to, have a green space, make an educational opportunity, have this access to fresh produce, and do so while kind of really helping the environment by keeping the food more local. So it's this very multifaceted way to help your community. So I really encourage folks to reach out to us if they're interested in getting involved.
And I think perhaps the last point, if neither of you have anything further, is where can I go on the web to sort of, where's my entry point to learn more information about community gardens in the lower Naugatuck Valley?
Sure. So we have on our website, valleyunitedway.org. If you go under Need Help in our menu bar up top, you can scroll down to Grow Your Own, and that has information on all the different sites throughout the region. Or you can just type in valleyunitedway.org/grow-your-own/, and that'll bring you straight to the page as well. We're also doing updates every once in a while on social media through Facebook, so people can like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll be sharing information about the progress of the gardens there too.
Yeah, Becca, are you the person responsible for all like the graphic, I guess, memes that are coming out locally? Is that you for the United Way doing that?
Yeah, I'm in charge of all the social media.
Yeah, I am so jealous. Yeah, you really do a great job because I'm drawn into every one. I try to retweet them. I'm like, wow, I wish I had that ability. But yeah, and you're doing. I mean, the information is great too. It's there's just so much that you're packing into those images. I really appreciate it as someone who lives here. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and definitely let us know as well if there's other information that you want us to be sharing, that you guys as a community want to hear from the United Way to help you understand the world around us in our communities and what needs to be heard.
And then Corey, how do I get more information about the farm?
Absolutely. Well, you can head to our website, masarofarm.org, to get more information about all the things we have coming up. If you're interested in the community gardens specifically, as I mentioned before, folks can send me an email directly, and that is education@masarofarm.org. In terms of other happenings at the farm, we are adapting to sort of still offer programming. In the age of COVID, we have lots of virtual programming available. We also have a virtual summer camp program for children that's starting up later on this month. So there's more information about that on our website as well. So yeah, all the information on the website, and then you got my email as well for those things.
Okay, I want to thank you both so very much for coming on and for having patience dealing with my technical problems to get this going, but I really do appreciate it.
We appreciate you, Eugene, and all that you do for our Valley community and getting the good word out there about all the things that are going on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're great. You're very, very welcome. So on behalf of Becca and Corey, this is Eugene Driscoll saying see you next time on whatever this is called, Navel Gazing, the Valley Indie Podcast.
For hundreds of years we brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post just about dead. Well, ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the